Very basic question. How
There's
do you...
no basic question, there's all foundation questions.
Yeah. So another foundation question.
Yes, ask away.
How do you grow Koji? And how do you take care of it?
So to grow Koji, you need a substrate, and what that means is you can grow it on lots of different things. So you can grow it on everything from like any sort of starch. So usually in Japan it's been rice, and then you can also grow it on proteins, and that in Japan traditionally would have been grown on soybeans and cracked wheat, which is what makes your soy sauce, right? So there's different spores that are used to grow it on different things, but generally like a very multi-purpose type spores can be used on any, like it's just, if you're like making something commercially to sell, then it's better to have like specific spores that you get for specific things, but otherwise they'll still work. If you're playing around with it, if you're doing it for home use, you can just use like a all-purpose Koji, and that will work on starches as well as proteins. Now that said, you can also grow it on many different types of starches. You can grow it on oats, you can grow it on millets, you can grow it on anything that has starch. You could even grow it on cooked potato, you can grow it on cooked sourdough bread, or just regular bread. Anything that has starch, it will break down and convert to sugars. And the proteins can be anything from, like, let's say the soy sauce, all the way to like, you can grow it on meats, you can grow it on seafood, anything that has protein, you can grow it on. And it's incubated for about 48 hours, which is not like a strict time window, like it's not by the clock, but it's kind of like a time window. Usually my Koji, when I incubate it, it grows in like 36 to 40 hours, not necessarily 48, but some of the ones that are made can take longer, like 56 hours sometimes. So it's just an indicator that roughly about 48 hours, but you go by taste and go by smell, and it's like using your instinct to understand how, like when it's ready. I can go into a bit more detail if you have questions about this, but how you grow it is essentially to cook your, let's say you're growing it on rice, you cook your rice to about 75%. So you don't want it mushy, you don't want it soggy, you don't even want it to be as ready as you would when you eat it. So you want it slightly undercooked because that starch is going to break down. The Koji is almost cooking it to the last 25% that you have left uncooked. The Koji is cooking that. So you want to undercook your starch, and then you usually distribute the spores after diluting them in rice flour or wheat flour, whatever you're using, and you distribute it equally. And this is usually in like a certain percentage, and when you buy the spores, they will also tell you like how much of the spores you need for what quantity, and then you put it into an incubator. And this is the bit that is slightly tougher getting right, but like after a few tries, when you do your trial and error and the right incubation setup, then you'll figure it out within like 2 or 3 batches what's working and what isn't. But it needs high humidity and a consistent temperature of about 30 degrees, 27, 28 to about 32 is the range that you can go into. And when you incubate it, you're putting it in, you have to maintain this. There are different ways of rigging these incubation setups. Something that costs very little to something that can cost quite a lot and like is industrial size and all of that. Now in the first 24 hours, you have to get it up to that temperature range, and then in the next 24 hours, the Koji produces its own heat as the mycelium eats and spreads across the substrate, and then the challenge is to not let it over. When we grow it, especially in warmer climates, the challenge then becomes to to reduce the temperature so that it doesn't overheat. So it's better to have like temperature cages that have like some sound sensor or something, so if it goes above a certain temperature, then it go off so that you know to bring it back. And there are lots of different ways of doing this based on the incubation setup.